This is Talking in Stations. It is the Invasions expansion, or at least episode 37 after the Invasions expansion. I am Artimus Albosa, a member of NOIR. Joining me today, my faithful co-host Silver Suspiria, a member of Federation Uprising.
What's up, everyone?
Also joining us today, we have quite the show for you. Going in alphabetical order of our guests, first we have Arkadios Soul, a member of Severance.
Hey, good to be here.
Thanks for showing up. Also, we have another member of Severance, CJ Allyn.
How's it going? It's CJ Allyn. Just
Allyn, pardon me.
Careful. Dog.
All right. And we also have, joining us on the show, RoCkEt X, a member of Purple Helmeted Warriors.
Hey guys, good to be here.
And rounding out our guest list today is TheLastSparton, with an O, not an A, member of Templis CALSF.
Hey, so glad to be here.
And we are glad to have you, as well as all the rest of our guests. If you haven't guessed yet, based on our guest list, we're going to be talking about conflict ongoing in the region of Providence today. This is a war that has been going on and off, so to speak. Some may even not call it a war, but definitions are fluid, so to speak. And it's been going on for quite a while now. In fact, over a year, I want to say, if you consider it one continuous conflict. And it has actually flared up as of late with a considerable increase in the frequency and scale of hostilities. But we're going to rewind the clock a bit and start out with discussing how did this conflict begin? And before we can do that, we of course have to mention what groups are these guys from. We mentioned their alliances, but Severance is a member of Providence Block. They are the current residents, or have historically been residents, of the Providence region. And then we have Purple Helmeted Warriors, Templis CALSF, and a number of other corporations and alliances who are members of the organization known as Rekking Crew. Do you guys consider yourselves a coalition? What is your classification for that group?
It's kind of weird, I guess, to be honest, because we never really, I don't think we are a coalition. I'd never considered us to be that, really. We're just like an amalgamation of a group of low-set groups that have come together and decided that we want the same kind of content.
Right on. And full disclosure, as far as biases are concerned, I am a member of NOIR, and NOIR is a member of Rekking Crew. So take that as you will. Anyway, let's delve a bit deeper. I believe Providence, or Proviblock, is the older of the two organizations. So Arkadios, CJ, can you guys, what's a very brief history of Provi and how'd they get into Providence?
Provi's been here in Providence for over 10 years, right? Originally started as basically a bunch of Amar role players that wanted to turn this area called Providence into an extension of the Amar Empire. So it kind of lives on today in our, the old Amar Victor meme that we do and that kind of thing. But specifically, we developed a society in EVE Online where we can have people come in and enjoy 0-0 to its fullest without being hunted. We fly the NRDS ROE. As many people know, it's a very unique rule of engagement that something that we've stuck by and continue to stick by to this day.
What does that acronym mean?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Not red, don't shoot. Means if they're not on our cost list, which we have so many reds, in fact, that we use an external database to keep track of them all. And we let people that are not cost come live in our space and enjoy the fruits of 0-0 as they see fit, provided that they, don't kill people.
Cost meaning kill on site.
Yeah.
And how do you get on the kill on site from CBA?
By shooting anybody in the coalition, really. Any infractions, stealing, shooting, stuff like that.
So if I'm like a neutral guy in an Astero and I just want to run some exploration sites and I'm neutral to CVA and I'm not on the kill on site list, I'm good to do that?
Of course. Until you steal somebody's site. Like if you're a neutral and you come down and you're in a Astero, you're a new guy, and you don't really know what's going on, and you get into a site with another player that's blue or even neutral even, and you push them out of the site via aggression, just, shooting them or scaring them off, and taking the site from that. That's another good way to get on the cost list. There's a list of rules on the CVA website that you can look at that'll tell you all the things that'll get you in trouble.
Yeah, I always thought that this way of living was kind of fun and different. You don't really get this in other regions anywhere.
It's something that we really enjoy, and it's something that I've grown to love. At first, it's very difficult, right? It's EVE on hard mode, if you think, because you got to trust people you don't know. Is this guy going to come in here? Is he going to drop on my carrier? That's a chance I got to take, you know?
Proviblock is definitely a unique place. It's a unique group. A lot of people miss that.
All right, well, that is a good introduction to Proviblock. Let's shift our focus over to Rekking Crew, yet another unique organization in EVE Online, as we've already discussed a little bit. RoCkEt X, TheLastSparton, how did Rekking Crew begin? Who are they?
I'll take this one, as I've pretty much been around since the start. So, Rekking Crew originally was just a group of guys that liked to fly and kill supers, and we just started ganking them and found ways and mechanics to do it and made it a science rather than just guesswork. But our content kind of died out when Citadel came around and you had structures that you could instantly sino on. This was before the kind of 60-second you can't tether thing going on. So it was pretty safe, and we spent ages killing Citadel to try and keep our playstyle alive, and it just wasn't realistic anymore. So we kind of had to look for something new. So Rekking Crew went from a few small low-set corps to a lot bigger. Eventually, obviously, as most people are aware, we dropped a keep star and had to build numbers in line with defending that, and it's just come from there, really.
Right on. Do you still do now that the changes have come into place where moving capitals and super capitals are more vulnerable, do you do the hunting thing still?
We do, but not really to the same extent. Mainly, it's devolved from watching moving supers to just ganking stuff that comes through our space, really, just because it's not special anymore. Like the mechanics that we used back in the day, like 7-8 years ago, are super well known now. So there's really it doesn't really make a difference to us. The reason we did it in the first place is because, it was something special. It was something new for a low set group to go around killing supers, but it's commonplace now. So really, it doesn't really hold any interest for us. So we wanted to do something bigger, and that meant getting more people and picking on someone either our own size or bigger.
Right on. And you guys are staged in Camel. That's where the Keepstar is. That is right adjacent to Providence. Was the Keepstar going up strategic for hunting, like your original thing, or did you place it there so that you could move on in what was planned to be and what currently is Rekking Crew?
Well, the Keepstar anchoring story is kind of funny, in honesty. So basically, we wanted to keep it so OPSEC that we didn't want anyone to know, even our own members. Most of the director team didn't even know within Rekking Crew either. So what we did was we lived in Suspiria before, which is 2 jumps away, and also kind of a system off a pipe, so to speak. Kamal itself is a dead end, though. So what we did was we set everyone up, told them that we had a target that was in Kamal and logged off, and that we were keeping the system clear, collapsed all the wormholes in the local area, camped all the gates, and just told our own guys to keep Kamal clear, and then made them wait for this Leviathan for 24 hours that didn't actually exist. And then when the 24 hours was finished, we lit the Sino, jumped everyone in. There was no levy to kill, but they had a Keepstar to put their stuff in. And I think it took most people. I think about one of our own guys thought it was funny and posted it on one of the old school forums. I don't even remember which one it is, probably Scrap Heap or something like that. But yeah, that got removed pretty quickly, and it took most of our local hostiles a few days to notice.
Right on. All right, so now that you guys, or everyone, has a bit of a better idea of who these two organizations are and how they started, let's shift our focus onto the conflict between you two, because you are actively fighting, but I want to look backwards in time to when this fighting started in earnest, so to speak. When did it stop becoming roaming gangs and little skirmishes on gates and gate camps and things like that and become a proper fight?
Well, we've been dealing with HTP, Honorable Third Party, and Purple Helmet Warriors for quite a while. I would say the better part of 3 years, actually. They used to do a lot of hunting, whale hunting, as we like to call it. They hunt carrier ratters, stuff like that. And we deal with them. They fought in the shadows a lot. We didn't really have any major conflicts. But then, as you all know, the outposts got turned into faction fortizars. Thus, the PL invasion happened, and we all were, we got kicked out of Providence for the most part. We lived in LoSec and other various parts nearby so that we could, continue fighting with PL and try and take back the region that we fought so hard. But we just got rolled. There's no other way around it. We spent about 3 months fighting PL, and obviously RC took advantage of that, and they got a pretty good foothold in a big pipe called the H6 pipe, and a little bit on the tail end of the VKI pipe. So they had established some systems, got some really good ADMs because they grind. And then Test came to evict PL and get all the stations for themselves as kind of, I guess you call it a payment almost. The Test payment was these faction fortizars, and we get to keep our space. So, but what remained was RC, and they grew ever stronger. They gained a corp called the Rogue Consortium, who at the time was very small, and they were a contender to be in Providence, but things fell out. I don't know exactly what happened, but they obviously joined RC, and so they've been a strong sov holder in that pocket ever since.
All right. How about from the Rekking Crew perspective? What did that move into Providence and during the time when the stations were becoming faction fortizars? What did that look like for you guys?
I think time frame wise it's pretty accurate, but it was kind of awkward for us as well because we kind of planned to take YMP just to see if we could. Didn't really know how Provi would react to it. So we dropped our first structure in there literally on like the 1st of January or something like that, and then took SOV just as PL was moving into the area, and YMP was one of them, if not the first system to fall. The problem we then had is obviously PL are super long-term friends of Rekking Crew, and indeed I have a lot of personal friends in PL still. And they basically, when they moved into the area, asked us to stop taking space because they wanted it. So obviously we stood aside and said, okay, we won't take much more. Some of the systems that we did end up taking, there was a few that we owned, including VKI at the end of it. And for that part, we definitely took advantage of the PL invasion happening at the same time. That's also why we held YQB so strongly initially as well. YMP probably wasn't affected in the same way because we took it so early, but realistically, by the time we took any other system, it was definitely whilst the whole PL thing was going on. But what essentially happened was we took a few systems. PL noticed, asked us to stop and leave them to it, which we did. We had a couple of good fights with Test whilst when they came in. And when Test came in to kick PL out, they had a fight with us, and they went to drop dreads on us. But we logged dictators in on the Test fort to stop their dreads jumping in, and managed to frag a load of their shit and get out. Test kind of looked favorably on that in the sense that we give them a good fight and had some good lulls, etc. And I think from memory offered to let HTP keep YMP, which is why they never got kicked out of YMP when Test left. Realistically, we were a small fry, and they and the rest of us, and Test just didn't care. In terms of the faction forts, we actually managed to nab 4, stealing 2 from Legacy Pets, 1 from, I think it was Care Factor? No, someone else that moved out of Provi around the time. Basically, they up and left, and Provi just didn't care to do anything about it. Yeah, there we go. That's them. And so we took their fort and 3 others over the course of a few months. But like I say, Test never really took an interest in us, so we just held the space and then realised it was kind of fun to fight Provi, and it's gone from there. I think we've had some great fights on both sides actually. We've traded like shitloads of dreads on either side, with us losing 70-80 bill in one go and probably doing the same month to month. And in honesty, I think it's a pretty healthy conflict for both sides, and moving forward from that, it like I say, it's just been an opportunity for the old Rekking Crew guys that refused to use Stargates at one point, and would only jump to Sinos into subcaps, and Spartan is now doing a good job of educating them, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good general background on how this all started out. Also something to note, I think a lot of people miss that Proviblock was primarily EU time zone coalition, right? Rekking Crew are mostly US time zone. I think this conflict really started to kick off about last year around March or May, when the US time zone of Proviblock actually started to try and take back systems, particularly H6 Tech from TRC. We actually managed to do that. You know, it took H6, we took another system back, we lost them again. It was like back and forth for a while. And during those times, we did actually have a lot of good fights with Rekking Crew. You know, Ferox brawls, all that kind of stuff. It was great. But things, you know, eventually start to escalate. You know, sides want to start to win. They find ways of winning. And that's where things started to turn into what it is right now. You know, the whole fun brawls thing kind of just stopped to turn into cat brawls in every single engagement. You know, taking Sov became, you know, huge fights, or, you know, you would lose like 30 bills just for like a system you never take or whatever. It's like I said, it's escalated extensively since then, and I think both sides have improved heavily on that part, especially for Proviblock. I mean, Provi, you know how Provi is. It's we enjoy the small stuff, the casual stuff. We don't like doing the big stuff. You know, we just like to chill, do some PvP. But this conflict has definitely motivated a lot of people. It's militarized the U.S. time zone quite a lot, and I think, you know, a lot of things have improved. It's really great.
You mentioned there that things
Certainly
have been...
after Provi went back into Provi, after PL basically got thrown out by Test, like, Provi was in a pretty bad way, having been evicted, and like, I think the conflict, as Ark said, has like really driven them to arm up. And like, realistically now, like, you know, they formed 200 guys against us in Euro time zone, and that realistically is why we have to use the time zone tank to some extent to our advantage. Just because we literally can't compete with that, because we don't have anywhere near that number. But we do get balanced fights every now and again, and it's kind of nice. But it can be difficult as well, because if we start involving other people, like one side will bring in, you know, Tester in it, and then we'll bring NC or Horde or something like that, and then the fight stops being just us and starts being who can bring the most friends. I think at that point it's a lot less fun. But it's always difficult to tell who's bringing who and if you need to bring friends. So it can get a bit frustrating sometimes, in the sense that once the fight gets that big, it's not really that fun for us either, because we're really more about the content than the objectives ourselves. So as you can imagine, if we get involved in a 600-man fight, of which we are like 40 dudes, then we're a bit like, yeah, you know, why are we here?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the longer conflict goes, though, the more likely you're going to start to get friends called, right? The more tired one side becomes with the other defending or attacking and not making progress, right? It's sort of a natural progression in a prolonged conflict.
Right, but there's the thing is, there hasn't been a lot of progression, right? It's just it's really just a continuance of content. It's what it is. I mean, if this is a war, it's a slow one, very slow. They've got 9 complete systems in control, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like 10% of Providence out of the 84 systems that are. They have TCUs and a couple others. You know, we haven't actually killed each other's Fortizars or any real strategic structures in quite a while. I think the last time a Fortizar died was when they anchored one in 9 UI, and it was a call center. Let's be honest. Everybody and their brother showed up for that.
We did kill a fort in half like last week, but that's not really a strategic thing for you.
No,
it was just
the guy that owned that fort left. He left our coalition, right? So
yeah,
he didn't. He didn't leave the coalition.
He told us.
The fort.
He told us just let it go, and I was like, all right, we'll let it go.
As a bit of a tangent here regarding leaving the coalition, we've had a request from a user in chat asking about the various alliances who have come and gone from Proviblock over time. Is there anything you can speak about the various alliances who have left in recent past?
Eve's a dynamic game. Coalitions gain and lose alliances, you know, yearly. It's a lot of the guys that left, a lot of the alliances that left, Victus, Warped Intentions, Uli Federation, those guys. We have Volition Cult. They all left to go join Legacy, and Volition Cult left before the PL thing, but once Provi fell or started to crumble, you saw a lot of these other alliances leave and join, you know, bigger coalitions for a more stable environment. Because once you lose that stable environment that you have that attracts so many people, so many alliances, they leave. They'll go find someplace else, and that's their right. Not everybody is as tenacious as alliances like our alliance, Severance. We're very tenacious. We'll fight you no matter what. We'll live right next door, and we'll still come harass you every day if we have to. We always undock and always will.
Right. So along that same line, though, with coalitions or alliances leaving because they want more stability, that's what I'm sort of getting at. Like a prolonged conflict is, though the PvPers love the content, it's disruption, right? It's I
is.
can't crab because it's a fight every night, or I'm being called to a CTA every other night, or I got to go defend every other night. It becomes a grind,
But you see
and
the
that
ebb and flow because of that. You see spark like this sparking conflict this past month it's been hot and heavy, but before that it was quiet, and it's up and down because both sides are like that. So they run out of money, right? It's the dollar that drives the force, if you will. If I can't afford a doctor and ship, the FC will figure that out eventually, that he's not getting enough ships in comp, so we got to tone down the timers, let people make money, that kind of thing.
Speaking of the spark for this particular conflict, what was it? What caused if we can't even identify a singular thing, what has been the reason for this sudden spike in the conflict?
I would go as far as to say blackout.
Yeah, blackout.
Like recently,
100%.
because if you think, so Provi kind of has this kind of meme reputation of not defending its space, but the reality is that isn't even close to true. Most probably like people that we see in fleets are just their guys that chill and rat and do their own thing in their own time throughout the day, and they show up to defend their space when the pings go out. And to be honest, I think that's a pretty sweet mentality for people to have in nullsec these days. Now, like I say, it's nothing new, but it's nice to see that happen. And like I say, they do throw a lot of members at us. And when blackout hit, that meant that those people who just generally, do their thing day in, day out, perhaps weren't able to do that, because we had a lot of our old guys come back that wanted to hunt and do that and just put ults throughout Provi during blackout, and it made it impossible for them to do anything. And it meant that their numbers dropped. So when they formed fleets, they didn't have as many numbers, coupled with the fact that their ADMs were dropping because no one was ratting in the space as much. And it meant that kind of time zone envelope flowed over into US time zone, which is why we were able to take the systems that we did. So it's really just ADM decay off the back of blackout, and that's why the recent progress has been made. Realistically, I don't really see any rapid progress like we've seen in the last month. Like, I don't see any change in the dynamic between us and Provi, unless something else like blackout happens and it slips again. And realistically, it could go either way. We don't really rat in our space, and TRC kind of lives in the space that we've taken, and that's kind of what they're there to do. They want to live there, and the low sec guys don't, and that's kind of what TRC does. And they started as a pet, but as you can all pretty much tell, they're a very functional part of what we do now, and as much a part of Rekking Crew as anyone else is.
So looking at some of the fights that have happened, I'm noticing that very much seems a preference for Rekking Crew to field rattlesnakes, and then you guys initially started out flying a lot of Loki fleets, but you've recently upgraded to rattlesnakes. But Providence, you guys consistently fly Munins. Is there a particular reason for this doctrine choice between you guys?
Well, it's meta.
I'm sorry.
You want to talk about us, or
Yeah.
Go ahead, CJ. Take it away.
So the Munins, obviously, they're the comp right now. Everybody uses them. They're fast. They hit hard. And for having only 4 mids, they got a good tank. With those ADCs, you can fight a lot of stuff that you shouldn't be able to. The primary reason that Provi is using the Munins is the mobility factor, right? You have 2 very different play styles here in play. You've got RC, which is very capital heavy. They rely on capitals to fill the void of the player base they don't have, like the field Hodreds, and they'll use faxes for extra logi and that kind of thing. And it's not our thing. We don't use that because it's not fun for me, for example. That's why I just do strat-op stuff. I don't do the big cap CTAs. But continuing on, I digress. Munins they're mobile, and they get us around and get us out of a situation where we don't want to be in, like brawling Hodreds with hacks. You don't want to be in that situation, so you need to be able to get away fast enough and still be able to decimate the enemy fleet. There's been times where we were still fragging and they still had us outnumbered on field. That's the joy of the Munin.
How about you,
And-
Spartan? What's the Loki and Rattlesnake do for Wrecking Crew?
The Rattlesnake is actually something that we brought from when we were in faction warfare, because it was the ship that I love to use in pretty much most of them. It's
Yeah, I've been on the
tanky.
receiving end of that quite often.
It's really tanky, does a lot of damage, and it's easy to hold the field, especially if you have a minnow or two.
So finding rattlesnakes is tough as hell.
Sure it is.
Especially when they have faxes, because once they have faxes on field, which they almost always do, constant reminder, it's just they're hard to break unless you have enough materials. That's what we'll use.
Yeah, I think what CJ said was completely right. Like, we're both playing to our strengths. Definitely our side is more the skirmish side, dictating range, engage when we want, leave when we want. Wrecking Crew's side is definitely going to be more on the cap heavy side, and that definitely works well into their favor. We know it's extremely frustrating to deal with their caps. That's how it is.
How does that interplay connect with the fighting that we see over in Tosis nodes? As this fighting is mostly sparked to the result of a recent acquisition by Wrecking Crew of Providence space. Providence is trying to take that space back, right? Fighting over these nodes are what we're fighting for, is what I'm trying to say. So how does this doctrine choice impact the fighting over the nodes?
Compartmentalization, really. You got a lot of the space that we're fighting the Sov in is pocket, right? So all they have to do is plop that snake fleet on the gate that enters this pocket with fax support, and we either got to jump into it or ignore it. This is the only choice. And then you've got our doctrine. If we do, we can jump through it and we can burn off. I've done it a few times. We lose dudes, but that's the way it goes. We're out there to bull. We're out there to game. That's what we're there for. We're not there to stand down. So that's what you got. You got a blockade fleet and a skirmish fleet.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it depends for us. Sometimes if we're in Rattlesnakes, then we'll do what he says. We'll sit on a choke point and just wait and try to make them come into us, or go behind us and then we just chase them down and block them into a different. If we want to be more mobile, that's when you use the Lokis mostly. We were using healers a lot, but once you start getting towards like 40 or 50 Munins, then the healer just evaporates. So the Loki is a little bit tankier.
This thing with healers, right? They're good for small comp, and you guys use them really effectively when you've got 30 people. That's your go-to. But it's easy to stop when you have enough of something. Like I'll use 30 jackdaws and I'll be fucking alphing, Gila's off the field, Bassie's off the field.
We call Spartans Gilas Magic Gilas because he's done a lot of great work with those ships over the years.
Yeah, I'll definitely say, like, every weekend around Provi, it's a solve game. It's a solve game. There's plenty of fights, plenty of content. I will say 90% of these solve battles, it's not actually the battle itself. It's more about just the positioning of the fleets. Well, it's like what CJ and Spartan said. It's the question of who's on which side. Do you control the pocket? Yes or no? You control the pocket, you pretty much won the fight. If you don't, well, you're gonna have to force it. And most of the time, when you force it, you're the one that's gonna lose.
Yeah, you just don't be a weenie. Man up, jump through.
It's kind of nice as well. I mean, we do get like a variety of timers as well. So like you guys have like structures in our space, we have structures in yours. If you reinforce one, and you can basically pick like what kind of fight you want. Do you want to fight on a structure that's in your space that you can Sino jam, or do you want to reinforce one in enemy space where you have less control over it? And you can kind of pick the fight and time zone by which structure gets reinforced. And provided that there's provided that we're still happy to shoot each other's shit and Tosis and stuff, then I don't see any reason why content would stop or go downhill. And it's been, I enjoy it. I mean, honestly, it's been like this last year or so of like fighting Provi and going back and forth with them has been some of the most fun I've had in the last 14 years.
Personally, I believe the Citadel mechanics kind of forces a single type of gameplay, to be honest. Like, I know it gives you content, but that's like the only content you can get. You wanna get some fights, you gotta get a timer. Back in the day, it used to be a lot more fun when you could just get a fight, you just undock, go to the gate, oh look, something's happening here.
Yeah, and that favors towards the RC guys because they're ping warriors. That's their game style. They don't. That's again,
Well,
it's the switch
I'd
between
say
the
the
two player
same.
time.
let's
But
talk
we're
about
not
that a
though.
little
I'm
bit.
on every night. I'm gaming with the boys every night. I only see you guys like Spartan. I never see you out roaming around or doing anything. The only time I ever see you is on a timer, and I see a lot of the guys are like that, and that's the difference. That's okay. You want to be a timer orientated group. That's the thing.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because there's sort of a meta that's shifted all around New Eden, right? Like it's very difficult to get a fight unless you threaten something of value,
That's right.
right? So fights happen over what? Tackled Rorquals, Citadel timer, stuff like that. There's no more like just roaming for the sake of roaming. Um,
Yeah, like
and
I
why do you
feel
think that is?
Providence
Like,
is
what
one of
why
the
what
few
happened to
fleets.
that?
Just having lower level FCs that are willing to do that kind of thing. It's what it boils down to because FCs are the content generators of the game. They're the driving force. If you don't have some dude doing a defense fleet every night, no one's gonna come.
Is
Why
it
go to
that,
a reason?
or do you feel like Spartan too? Like, are your groups getting to the point where you got a lot of older players, right? That really just want to log in if it's the sure thing, which is why they go to the CTAs and the pings and stuff, but kind of get bored roaming around for a couple hours and you may or may not get a fight. Is it the player base age? Is that sort of the mode? Because that's what I've been seeing.
I think it's just the game, like you're saying.
Yeah,
At
you go
this
on a roam.
point.
There's nobody to fight. That's why I just sit on my ass in 9UI with my defense fleet and attack anything that shows up on it.
I know from my personal experience, it has been less I want the sure thing of content and more I figured out the tricks to hunting. Like going around catching VNIs, catching Dominixes, Helas, whatever they may be, there are certain tricks of the trade that you use in order to acquire those kills. You also have the process of figuring out what kind of fits you want to use, what routes to use, looking through Dotland, learning to use those tools. And so part of the fun of roaming and doing that sort of thing was getting those kills. Also, if you're looking to fight defense fleets, a similar thing. How do you design a comp that can fight a defense fleet? Stuff like that. But after a while, you've learned it. You've been there, you've done that. It's not exciting anymore. You need to find something new to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just miss the days where you can undock and warp around gates for a while and then find another group just looking to fight anyone who's out. And part of the reason why I like Proviblock is that if I go through 9UI with something, they'll undock just to fight. I don't really have to do anything. I don't have to threaten them.
Hell yeah!
That
You
sounds
show up,
true.
you show up an intel dude with a fleet.
We're there.
We'll come fight you, dude. It's every time. I'll undock. I'll form a fleet.
But and you're
Especially if
mostly
it's
fair,
nothing cool.
right? So
Yeah, I'm not trying to over drop a bunch of caps on your 10-man faction cruiser gang. I'm not out there to do that. I'll try and form
that's our
something.
job.
That's our C's job.
Hey,
We'll form
sometimes
something.
it
It'll
happens,
be fun
but-
fight. I always try to have the funnest fight possible. I'm not gonna, put my fleet in danger by underforming. I'm not gonna fight your faction cruiser fleet with a bunch of T1 destroyers. That's brave newbie's job. It's all day.
Anyway,
we have fun. Go down there.
We digress, but I just want to. That's an interesting point that I see in Eve. And the meta has definitely shifted to, in order to get that PvP conflict, you got to kind of threaten something important
to get the bigger,
Yeah,
to get
higher
that
end
bigger
stuff.
fight, yeah.
right from so the first thing that we did really like this year was on, well, I guess last year really, but we anchored 20 Astro houses throughout Provi, so that they came out on like Christmas morning or
I
something.
still
like
hate you to this day for that.
Oh, you guys
I'll
are
never,
sorry.
I'll
I was
never forgive
that
you for
guy.
that, man. That ruined my career. I hated that.
The
That
thing
made me
is-
almost quit the game, dude. I'm serious.
Sorry, man.
I had to form like
Cold.
12 10-man Vexor fleets, man. That sucked.
The worst part is like
We
I
killed
think all
most
the
of
guys.
them. We killed
Yeah, you killed
all
like
but
you killed
like
10. It was 10. It was even half like you killed.
was good.
And so there's a few things as well that contributors to us losing so many actually when we did that. So firstly, we didn't realize that when a structure comes out of its anchoring period and gets shot, it doesn't give you a notification.
Oh,
So people sat there without eyes in any of the systems, just waiting for notifications. And the first notification we got was one of them blowing up. At which point we realized we had a real problem and started burning around like crazy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
either.
remember that. It was very strange because we're like, if these guys do anything, they're just gonna let us kill them.
I also got the wrong day as well, because at the time I thought it was a week to anchor, and it wasn't. It was 6 days, so it came out a day earlier than I planned it. So it came out on like Christmas Eve instead of Christmas Day or something. But Christmas Eve is Christmas Day for
It's pretty
like a
messed
lot of
up,
Europe.
though.
So yeah, it wasn't a nice thing to do. I'm not
That
denying
was
that.
right in the nuts. It's a pretty weenie move, if you ask me.
I mean, like,
But
they weren't even the only ones to do it either. Who was it that anchored how many Raitarus? Was it 40 Raitarus were anchored in Delve on
It
Christmas?
was Horde, Goblins, yeah.
I was
It's
evicted on
toxic.
Christmas, so yeah, that happened to me. Same Christmas. So.
I have to say, Citadel mechanics can be extremely abusive. To be
We
honest.
also during that whole engagement thing as well, some random guy, I think he was a Provi dude, decided to go and like try and shoot one of them in a Nyx and got tackled by one of our Dictor ults and died. And like literally, like we had spies on Provi comms and literally none of them cared. I don't think they even knew he was dead for a while because he just said nothing.
Well, yeah, okay.
But like then we realized that we lost a shitload of citadels to the tune of like 20 plus bill, which was pretty much the value of what we killed anyway. So we kind of went home and shrugged, and I ran around trying to fit all of these citadels and online them before they got reinforced, which was painful, as you can imagine. But it's my own entire fault, and would have been worse if more of them had lived.
Can we talk for a moment about the use of super capitals in this area? Because Provi, not historically known to be a super capital force. Rekking Crew, on the other hand, use super capitals on occasion and extensively, depending on your perspective, in their ganking exploits. So, is it just the case that neither side has enough super capitals to field a proper fleet? Like, how do they play into this field of battle here?
We both have super capitals, and we both probably has like a sleeper kind of sleeper super fleet. We don't use it, never have, probably never will. No real reason to. And then you've got RC. They've got a pretty good super umbrella. It's no joke. They know how to use them. That's one thing they have over us. We don't use them enough to be confident with them, I guess, is really what it is. And they have the experience, like RoCkEt X. He's been flying supers for almost a decade, at least a decade, probably, right?
09, so yeah.
I don't even own a super, right? How am I supposed to fly one? So it's. I don't think RC and Provi have had an actual super capital engagement of note. There's been a couple kills here and there of the odd super carrier here, but that's about it. They'll use them, but we won't. It's just kind of the thing. It's not our style.
Something that Proviblock is definitely separate from the rest of the null set groups out there. Like teacher said, we have supers. It's just there's no real interest in using them, or we're not really confident in using them. Not yet, anyways. But sometimes you don't need. You can have a good fight with just subcaps. Have at it.
Yeah, I don't find capitals fun or enjoyable. They're just weights, big bricks you got to drag on with you.
We're like completely the opposite in this. We have literally the opposite problem. So like when we form like a cap fleet, we then sit there and we're like, well, we can kill all of their capitals, but we can't deal with the subcap fleet. And if the subcap fleet can keep us tackled, all it takes is a phone to test, and we've got 150 dreads on us in about 20 minutes, right? That's not a situation we want to find ourselves in, because if we can't deal with the subcap fleet, then we wouldn't be able to extract. So we have to be super careful about how and when we do this sort of thing. But when we do drop supers, it's generally to go for some kind of bait where we're using an objective, and we'll try and put it so that it's in our favor. So the one I linked in Discord, we made the fight happen on a fort, basically, that was on our fort grid, and then dropped our own Titans at range from the Provi Dread fleet whilst being in tether range of our own fort. And then just warped them off to a pause once they DD'd, which was kind of a cowardly move, but it got the job done. And but I mean, like I say though, I mean, regardless of that fight going our way, there's been a lot of other fights that haven't, where we've lost like 80 bill plus in dreads at any one time.
How has signal changes affected your play?
Well, it means that we have to have like a blops with recons sitting on it that are just handed out by FCs in the Keepstar. So like you just have a bridge blop sitting next to your Titan. The bridge blops bridges to we just use the normal covert sinos to bridge the blops in, and the blops just warps onto the grid. So it's not really affected us too badly, but it has been like one kind of extra kind of subsection of your fleet that you need to have in place, which is kind of annoying considering most of us are multi-boxing anyway. It's not been terrible, but I mean there have been cases where we've been short and it's been kind of sketchy. And I think from what I'm aware, the same has happened on Provi's side in some cases as well, with struggling to get recons in place. But I mean, I think both sides are really just dealing with it as well as we can, to be honest.
The capital engagements are definitely, they're different now. You've got more stuff coming in, right? Because we've an engagement we did the other day where they tried to light a sino while we were, I don't remember what we were doing. We were shooting something like we always do, out booling. And they tried to light the sino close to us. You know, we were immune and blapped another one. And they're like, oh, well, heck, now what do we do? So now they go out to range, and now they have to bring in their carriers from range instead. So it's a game changer for sure on how both sides fueled their capital.
The dynamics changed quite a bit. I mean, before you just like bring in a hard dread, it'll attract attention. You just light the sino, boom. You know, you got carriers or more hard dreads coming in, and that's it. But you know, with the sino changes, you know, you're actually committing a sino that's actually, it's worth something. So 400 mil to light that sino. And the best part about it is that you'll know, like, okay, that ship is going to be a sino. I think Rekking Crew has definitely adapted a lot better to the silent chases than we have. But for us, at least, it makes things, I would say, a lot easier and a little more interesting as well.
Easier
It also makes it more
way.
Well, before, like I said, you know, like Rekking Crew would have this habit of trying to bait us to fight every day using a hard dread or something. They'll come to 90Y, come to the gate, you know, we always undock, like CG says, we always undock, we go for the fight. And then you light a sino, and then boom, you've won the fight, we leave the grid. There's nothing we can do because there's nothing we can do. But with the changes, with the recons, it's like now we'll know, okay, they brought a recon, they're going to light a sino. It gives us time to react, time to leave the grid, drop an inhibitor, something like that.
We also know the characters too. We've got it pretty well pinned down. You know, they've got a list of dudes that they're on alts that they use for sino. So we see that character come in, like, oh great, here comes. But in the end, I'm always walking away with a 400 mil recon kill. That's what I care about.
Well, we have lost a lot of recons, and I bought, like, when they made the changes, I literally bought like 30 of them and put them in the corp hangar, and I think I've got about half of those left.
Yikes.
And it was not cheap, I assure you. So, but I mean, part of the main change really for us in terms of like day-to-day fighting has been the fact that like the Provi guys here have said, like, not only do we, because capital combat these days really is all about positioning. So like you don't want your supers and your titans on top of your enemy dread fleet when you can jump them in at range, out of range of the enemy damage, right? Because why would you risk that when you don't need to? But not only do we have to think about the position of our capitals once they land, but also how we're going to get them in there more carefully, because recons are just too squishy. And if you have an enemy immuning fleet on grid, there's literally no way you're getting in unless you either go in at range or you uncloak something else first in the hope that they shoot it and get distracted.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It did make it harder for a bunch of my guys that would go around with hard dreads, as CJ was saying, like Retain.
Whatever happened to that guy?
He was never very bait, but he would always poke me when you guys started undocking way too much
we
to
know.
handle.
We know.
Yeah.
And then I would form a fleet and have to come and save.
I haven't seen him in a while. Is he good?
He's winning Eve at the moment.
Oh yeah, he's retired finally. So he won the game. I won't miss him. Let's put it that way.
All right, is there any other major points we want to hit on the conflict ongoing between you guys? Obviously, the Sov is still in the hands of Rekking Crew. Providence still interested in taking it back, so presumably things aren't going to be cooling down for a little bit unless something changes.
Say interesting and taking it back is a kind of a loose term. If we really wanted it, I'm sure that we could outsource and get it taken care of. But in the end, what do we do with it? They're just going to keep harassing it, keep trying to get it back. Who are we going to put in there? Half the reason it gets taken in the first place is because of no one uses it. right? And that's the same thing. We looked at the H6 pipe after we lost so much trying to take it back. We just sat back and realized, like, what are we doing? What are we going to do with this space when we get it back? They're just going to take it back again because we're not going to have anybody living in it. No one's going to want to live in it. So it's kind of just that thing. Right now, we're just in a constant continuum of content, and it's for the most part it's healthy. Sometimes it's not, but we'll see where the wind takes us, I guess.
It's like a lot of coalitions in this game. They have large swaths of space. No one actually lives in it. It's completely empty. I think the difference is probably so close to low sec and high sec as well. And maintaining these systems it's impossible. You can simply pick at one system, they'll take it, no problem. That's just the nature of it, I guess.
So you've got things which are valuable enough to start a fight over, but not valuable enough to bring a fight-ending force to end, or to bear, so to speak.
Basically, yeah.
All
But
right.
the space itself is pretty meh. I mean, I think there's like 4 R64 moons in the whole freaking region, dude. It's yikes. It's like 0-0 across the board. There's like barely anything below 0.5. It's pretty rough.
It's definitely come to the point where we just simply decide that, okay, does this have any real strategic value? Is it worth whelping 100 bill plus for it? Yes or no? Most of the times, no.
Yeah, I think on our side, like, I mean, the thing is as well, like when you get a kind of conflict, the kind of newer players and even to a certain extent some of the older ones will always be like, oh my god, why are you shooting me? Are you planning to invade? Has someone hired you? What have I done to wrong you? Why are you shooting me? When the reality is that you don't need a reason. Yeah, exactly. But you don't need a reason. Just content is enough. And like I think the majority of Provi, both command and FCs and stuff, and line members are starting to, more so line members, the FC guys have known it for a long time, but the line members are starting to grasp that now, and the kind of the animosity that we used to get from them is somewhat fading away, and it's kind of nice really to have that relationship with someone that's kind of a local rival that you can PvP with all the time, and there's no kind of real bad blood between us when after the fight. It's a good fight, we have fun, space changes hands, dreads get lost, SRP gets paid, and we move on, right?
Yeah, I guess it's I would say that some coalitions and groups in this game kind of wish that they would have a situation like I'd be happier if it was more in favor of each other on each other's sides, like you guys being capital, us being subcapital, casual versus ping warrior, just kind of level it out more. It'd be cooler, but we get what we get, and it's the way it goes.
I think in general, considering like what we've got to work with in terms of your members and mine, like we do pretty well out of what we've got.
All right. So moving on, we do have a little bit of news to discuss. This is something I'm certainly looking forward to. I don't know if you guys in Provi or in Rekking Crew may use this to a certain degree, but the new shared bookmark system utilizing the ACL, similar to how Citadels currently work, is going to be undergoing a mass test on the Duality server this Thursday, October 10th at 1700 Eve time, or UTC if you're using Google to find out what that is locally. Definitely be there and check it out and test it and break it, and that way CCP can fix it, because this should be a fairly awesome change coming through. I know I personally will be using it extensively to manage bookmarks across all of my in and out of corp alts. How about you guys in Rekking Crew and Provi? How much does this, or would this change affect you guys?
This is great. This is absolutely great. In fact, only a week ago we were just complaining about the fact that we couldn't share bookmarks between FCs. Yeah. It's really good. I'm glad CCP has finally added this. It's definitely going to help us a lot.
How about Rekking Crew with your clever use of neutral tunes to do your various hunting activities? Will this change help you at all?
I think it should help a little bit for the same reasons, though. I haven't really thought about it much.
Fair enough. Definitely everybody who can show up, do please. Help CCP, help you. It'll definitely be worth your time. And with that out of the way, we're going to move on to a little bit of a segment that we like to call Something You Might Not Know. So this is where the hosts and our guests try to tell our EVE or our podcast audience something they might not know in and around EVE Online. Could be lore, could be mechanics, could be player history. Just has to be related to EVE. So let's go ahead and go in alphabetical order here. Arkadios, what is something our audience might not know about EVE Online?
Well, something you guys might not know, especially if you just started the game out. I mean, this game is old, 2003 easily. But something you might not know is that in 2004, two alliances, and these alliances are rivals, mind you. They're still rivals up to now. Urshikan and Kurtorius Veritas' alliance were both made in 2004. Both of these alliances are still going up to right now. That's a hell of a track record.
They still hate each other. It's great.
Still hate each other. It's great. You know, Amar versus Mimitar.
Mar Victor.
Amar Victor.
Yeah, we'll actually be having a member of Ushrakan on next week. They're active in the faction warfare area nowadays, and they'll be talking about that sort of stuff. So glad to see both of those very historied and storied alliances still around and kicking. I guess I'm up next in alphabetical order. My something you might not know is that if you're an item hoarder, you like to sit in Jita and station trade or wherever your standing area may be, wherever you happen to be staged, but you experience some soul-crushing lag when docking in your station as a result of the number of those items, or you just can't quite keep them as organized as you'd like to, you can use station containers. They come in 3 sizes. If you're in Jita or somewhere where they're on market, probably the largest one, it's the warehouse one. If you're not, then like the regular station containers are only 10,000 meters cubed. T1 hauler can haul them to where you need them to get. And you can rename them, but you basically anchor them inside of your item hanger itself, and it becomes its own little container that can hold a bunch of items. There's a stack limit and of course a M3 limit depending on the size of container you get, but that is certainly a way that you can better organize your assets and also avoid some lag when docking and undocking from station or searching for various stuff. Alright, next down the list is CJ.
So a lot of my guys that are watching from Proviblock knows that it's no secret. My favorite ship of the game is the Hecate. It's the most mispronounced ship in the game. Everybody calls it a Hecate. It's not. It's a Hecate or Hecate. Hecate or Hecate. You can pronounce it either way. It depends. I call it a brocat because it's a brawling. You get in there, you get in your face, and you die. I fight anything with that thing, and I'll die to anything with that thing.
Scared.
Okay? If I kill it, it's the way it goes. If I die, away she goes. I got 20 deep. I get shipments monthly.
What's your fitting, may I ask, or are you flexible on that area?
Double web blasters. Whatever I fight, it's gonna eat pant.
I love it.
Check my kill board. I've got like 30 losses just this past 2 months.
While I check CJ's kill board, RoCkEt X, you got something our audience might not know?
Yeah, sure. So, in like true historical fashion, after my own background, so I was quite sick of Nyx's getting final blows and top damage on all the super kills that we were doing back in like 2009 through 11. So I bought myself a Wyvern and fitted as many drone damage amps to it as possible. And then the Dominion patch came out, which was nice. If you remember, it's the one that brought in anti-capital weaponry, and that was actually useful on Titans and fighter bombers and all that sort of stuff. Before they changed with Citadel and made squadrons and stuff, and they just functioned like drones. But basically, when they were first introduced, fighter bombers didn't have the correct explosion radius or explosion velocity stats. So basically, you do 19,000 DPS and apply perfectly to anything that was battlecruiser sized or bigger. So what I did was I took the Blackbird out on like 3 or 4 of my ults and just sat them on gates and waited for people to shoot me and then just dropped a super on them. And it was amusing because it caused a bug because everything basically got single volleyed. The only damage that would register was the last fighter bomber that fired a shot and got the final blow. So you get like Drake's dying with like 1,500 damage taken because of it. And yeah. And I also lost an Aeon doing that at some point as well. I don't remember the date because I self-destructed like a coward, but there's always that. The links are in the channel if you want to pass the links out for the random bugged kill mails.
And of course, they're old enough that all of the fittings show as in the cargo rather than actually fitted to the ship.
I took the time to find one guy that was from APOC now as well.
Well, right on. Going next down the list, Silver, what's your something the audience might not know?
Something that you may not know is that unlike a lot of games, most games, for me, Eve has turned into a more of a social event than a video game for me. The game is sort of a background thing, not even primary in my interest much anymore. I like building the community, and that can be a great, rewarding experience, and unlike any other game that you'll experience. I just got back from Texas, so I live in New York, so I traveled down to Texas to meet some people that I've been playing with for many years, and the guy that runs X Meta with me and runs FedUp, I've been playing this game with for 5 or 6 years now, and is a for real life friend. And it was a real pleasure to meet him and his family. And I met Spartan down there, who I've been fighting against. We were vehement enemies for like 4 years, and to be able to meet him in person and hang out with him and have a good time, um, that's part of the reward that you get that you probably won't see in any other game.
Right on. And round us out, Spartan.
So I guess for my thing that at least I didn't know until recently, with bombers that you can cloak after you launch the bomb. For the longest time, I was always told and under the impression that if you did that, then it would do no damage. I don't know how many other people were always told that, but
That was I heard
that was
as
new to
well.
me.
So it's still the case that like any torpedoes you have in flight or cruise missiles, those will despawn, but bombs are the special exception? Question mark?
I didn't try with missiles, so I am not sure on that.
Yeah,
All
missiles
right.
don't actually do damage when your warp drive is active. So if you like hit activate warp, they stop doing damage.
Right on. Good stuff to know. Thank you very much to our guests and Silver here for co-hosting with me for all of that information we got on the ongoing conflict between Proviblock and Rekking Crew over in the region of Providence. So Marlosec, or pardon me, Marian Nullsec, or at least that's what Proviblock is trying to make it. Definitely go out there, take a look around. It'll be interesting. Pardon me, pardon the laughter. That'll do it for this week's episode of Talking in Stations. You can tune in next week. We'll be back again at 2359 Eve time on Wednesdays. We also have the regularly scheduled Sunday show, Sundays at 1600 UTC. Make sure to tune into those, as well as we've got Mad Isk and Today in Eve Online and the Wormhole Story, or rather the whole story, so you can check those things out as well at your leisure. Alright, that'll do it. See you next time.